when you tap into that source, you get an immediate experience. So you have a feeling for that,
Right.
right? So then notice that feeling. When that feeling changes, that does not mean that there's a change in your circumstances.
Right.
All it means is there's been a shift. You're coming out of balanced again.
We're in the middle of a mental health crisis right now. All of that stems from this real disconnection that we have from who we truly are. Hello.
Hello.
Good morning, Rick. Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to An Honest Look.
Yes, good
Good to see
morning.
you.
And thanks for coming back and listening.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We are very excited to continue our off recording conversation, which we always get into right before we start recording. And then we just pinch ourselves and we're like, why did we not start recording
Why
yet?
are we not recording? Yeah. So let's just, I'll just get right into it because, so what I was telling you earlier, what I was sharing with Fati earlier was I just seem to be noticing that in the, and I'll call it the creative sphere, like the artists, the musicians, and people like that, that are creative types, let's just say, not to label anybody in particular, because I think we all have that capacity, right? We
Yeah.
all have that capacity. And I don't care if you can't draw a straight line. So you become a impressionist, right? Or
Well, creativity is not just art.
no, it's not about
No.
art. No,
Right.
absolutely. You can be creative in the baking. You could be creative, all sorts of different
Creative
ways.
thinker.
Thinker, clothing as yourself,
Right.
right?
Right.
An interrupter, disruptor.
Interrupter.
Interrupter. Anyways, I was sharing that me and my wife were catching up on the American Idol program. We've been behind a few programs, so we had an opportunity of sitting down for a few hours and just catching up. And there was one songwriter, that contestant, that wrote a song called "What If," and I just fell in love with this song totally, because it spoke so clearly to what I had been going through, what some of my clients have been going through. And what was really cool was not only the song, but sort of like how he evolved as a contestant, because he never signed up to be an American Idol contestant. He just happened to be in the same room, playing the piano, helping a friend, accompanying a friend, because she was the contestant. Anyway, long story short, what I got out of it was when Lionel Richie started to give his feedback about the song, he said a phrase that really kind of sunk in about, you wrote a song where all songs need to be written from. And that part was so powerful because it points to, well, immediately I started to think, what if businesses, like we look at businesses and companies and various other things, and how we value the intellect so much, and the thinking, and the like we have to strategize, and we have to do all this extra stuff, and we forget that there's a other side where wisdom and creativity and fresh new ideas come from, and we get stuck on the intellect. And with AI coming through and all this other kind of stuff, it's like, yeah, AI can write a song, but AI can't put a feeling into a song. And feelings come from a whole different ball game, right? So
They come from a different place.
yeah.
They come from a place that oftentimes cannot be intellectualized, right?
No,
So we'll see how empathetic this new AI technology is going to be able to be, right?
yeah.
Because there are some fears around, like, AI is going to take over, AI is going to replace us. I think to some degree those fears are valid. It will replace a lot of jobs and a lot of the tasks that we manually execute right now. There's one thing that AI doesn't have, and it's a beating heart. So we're not there yet. Maybe that will be possible at some point, but AI does not have a beating heart as far as I know. And that is what differentiates us from a machine, right?
That's what makes us human.
That's what makes us human. That's what
Yeah.
makes us human. And I love that you were referencing how much and we talk about this all the time, let's be honest, how much we are in our heads, how much we overuse our intellectual abilities, like our brain, we just analyze everything.
Well, even sometimes you have a conversation with somebody, right? And they go, like, "How's things going?" It's just, "Oh, it's like, oh, I'm kind of struggling. Well, do you need any? Oh, I'll figure it out."
Right. Or they get into the story,
Right.
and it
Yeah.
goes into a whole rabbit hole of, events and sequences that led them to, But, the other thing that I wanted to point to is, where did this come from? This is something that, I really learned from looking at the history of psychedelics and how the human brain has developed. And when did we shift out of these practices? They're not new practices, right?
Yeah.
People tend to think about psychedelics as a new one, something that's coming out now. We're finally, like discovering all these beneficial uses of, MDMA, and like all of that is true. But truth be told, these medicines have been used in indigenous tribes and populations for millennia. In fact, they were used by
All over
the
the world.
Egyptians. They were used in throughout history, right? There's even like theories around Moses maybe having consumed something that gave him that mystical experience that he describes, right? It's not, like when you look at where the substances were found in history, it's really, it's a possibility, right? But what
Sure.
really shifted us out of being connected to plants and their rituals, and like even some of the things that you see, around the Egyptians and the pyramids and all this stuff, right? That connection with other worlds that some of the psychedelics may provide, like DMT, all of that was very, very present in history. And what changed was we had the scientific and industrial revolution,
Hmm.
right? Which very much pointing at pointed us towards logic, right?
Yeah.
The way that it really pointed us towards using this logical brain. And then over the years, that just sped up and sped up and sped up. And so we have really developed this part of our being, right? Our brain, specifically that part that it analyzes and in like interacts with the world in that way, right?
Okay.
And that's who we have developed into being. That's what has created today's world, right? And at the same time, that is also the reason and at the base of a lot of the mental health issues that we have right now. Because inherently, that's not all that we are. Inherently, we need more than just an analytical brain to live a balanced, healthy life. So all these other parts of ourselves and our, intellectual abilities, because even the right brain is part of our intellect, right? Just from a different, it just works slightly differently. All these parts have weakened, right? Which is why people don't really know how to tap into their intuition, which is why we don't really trust ourselves, right?
Well, we
Which is
don't
why
even.
we can't
None
sit
of it is
still.
part of, and none of it is part of our education.
None of it is part of our education.
If
We have no idea. We're trained from a very early age. I can tell you that. I'm witnessing it with my children to
Mhm.
really, really put a lot of importance and weight on performance, achievement, all left brain
Yeah.
activities,
Yeah.
right? And if you are at the top of that, then you're good. And if you're not on the top of that, there's something wrong with you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the mental health issues that we are facing right now, because let's be clear, we're in the middle of a mental health crisis right now. All of that stems from this real disconnection that we have from who we truly are,
Yeah.
right? Inherently, deep
Yeah.
inside. We were born unlocked. We were born connected. We were born whole. And then all these different parts did not develop equally.
No.
There's a lack of balance. A lot of the mental health issues that we're facing is lack of balance, not just in our brains, but also in the way that our society is structured, the demands and the conditioning.
And we don't even, like, I was talking to a nurse the other day, and she was talking about the new hospital that's being built in our area. And I asked her, I said, what are they putting in there? Yeah, they're doing some great things for the patients, but what are they doing there for the staff? Like, what are you getting out of this kind of a thing? And I remember way back when there was an emphasis on play, when there
Right.
was, you know, and in executive boardrooms had ping pong tables, and people were encouraged to you know just get some little exercise, just get like go for walks, like let's have walking meetings, those kind of things. And all of a sudden we got so overthought everything, got so busy, we're to the point where people are not even taking lunch breaks anymore. They have working lunches.
Right. And we glorify those behaviors.
Well,
We
yeah,
reward those
you're
behaviors.
dedicated, you're a
Yeah.
dedicated
We
employee.
reward it. You're a good worker. You're a hard
Oh
worker.
yeah, we're going to promote you so you can work harder.
And in the process, what we're really doing is in trying to meet those expectations that come from the conditioning, social conditioning, we're betraying ourselves
Yeah.
on a level that shows up in all these different mental health issues, right? Depression, underlying anxiety, like migraines or even illness. Let's just say it. Illness is a manifestation of something within us that's out of balance.
Well,
And
no, I like the word because we brought it up a couple of times now. Is this notion of balance?
right.
So, one of the things in our educational departments, it's like, yeah, we've got budget problems and all this other kind of stuff, right? And what's the first thing that they cut? They cut all the creative programs out. It's like,
All
well,
of them.
all
All
of
of
them. Yeah.
them.
We're not
Yeah.
going to have music. If you want music, you'll have to find it yourself.
Same thing with my kids' school. It's
Yeah,
either music or art, and it's like 1 hour. It's
yeah,
like, why? That
yeah.
actually helps them get more creative and get
Well,
reconnected. And,
Inc. magazine just published an article about how bringing music into your work environment has the ability to increase productivity. Now, go figure this
right.
one out.
I
Go
could
figure
really
this.
connect with that. Yeah. Yeah. It gets you in the zone. We talk
Yeah,
about flow states in the zone.
yeah,
Different vibrations and different tunes can create actual metamorphosis in your brain, can
absolutely.
open up different pathways. So, like, there's a whole science behind all of this,
Oh, and,
why that is.
and that's why, like, I know you're excited with the psychedelics, and with me, with the practice of the three principles understanding, it points to the same thing, is that we point to that there's another source of intelligence that we forget about. And like what Lionel Richie was pointing out, where songs are written from. Well, where do you think good ideas come from?
Right. Where do they come from?
Where do they come from, right? They come in the shower. They
Right.
come while you're driving in the countryside. They come while you're jogging in nature.
Dancing, listening to music,
Yeah,
like when you're relaxed,
when
when you're
keep going.
reconnected, when you're
When you
present,
yeah,
when
when
you
you're
are truly in the moment, right?
yeah,
Because that's what being in the zone and flow states really is.
yeah,
And that's, talking about psychedelics again, that's what psychedelics really do. They make us deeply present,
yeah.
right? Because they lower the volume on that part of the brain that's like
But you're
the
overthinking.
default network. Yeah, that's like busy, busy, busy. And now we can actually hear things. It's like all of a sudden, it's a road filled with traffic and people honking and trucks, and there's road work and there's all sorts of stuff, and all of a sudden the volume is off.
Yeah,
Now you get out on your balcony and you look around and you start noticing things you
yeah,
never noticed because you never even stepped out,
yeah,
right? You're looking around. Wow, this is actually nice. Look how quiet it is. Oh, look at that. I never noticed that, right? It really allows us to see things and hear things and connect with parts of ourselves that we don't even notice they're there.
yeah, yeah. And we don't. And I know I used this phrase. I think we were going to try and do a show on it. We're thinkaholics.
Thinkaholics. Yeah, we are.
You
We
know,
really are.
we
Yeah.
overthink everything. And I love your analogy around the busyness of all we hear is just the busyness, right? of our minds going off, right?
Right.
And the minute that we're able to disconnect it, we fall back into that natural state. And that's where, like, you don't have to go looking for happiness because it's there already. It's there
Right.
with you. The minute you sort of let go of whatever thought you're holding on to, you fall back in. And and there's an immediate effect when you take your with the psychedelics. And I know you're learning lots about it right now. And what I like what you told me this morning was, from the psychologists that are in your group, that there needs to be a paradigm shift.
We are in the middle of a paradigm
Yeah.
shift with all this research coming out with what we are finding out, that is possible with the use of psychedelics.
Mm.
And he even went as far as saying, the way that we diagnose and label things that
Yes.
we believed from a mental health perspective that people were just stuck with, for lack of better word,
No,
we're
and they are.
realizing those things can actually be changed. And epigenetics is showing us that. And like the research is showing us that. And what we're also finding out, it is actually happening quite quickly. When you
Yeah.
use psychedelics, we're able to achieve that in a very short amount of time. Like we're talking about weeks versus months and years.
Yeah.
Really, let's just be honest. Months, I never heard of. I went to a therapist for months.
No.
It's typically years. So that's just with exceptions, right? So this is the difference that we're talking about. And it's like, how can you ignore it? We have this opportunity to help people heal and shift the way they think about themselves and literally have a chance, see a chance at life by changing the way we diagnose people, by offering them, a tool, because really is a tool, right?
Mhm.
To see things in a way that allows them to heal themselves on their own. Like a lot of what he also was going into the protocol, psychological part of it, the
Mhm.
protocol that is being used to study this, therapists are really being asked to kind of allow things to happen, not do so much guidance, right? And just really sit back and like because some people were asking, was isn't that a passive approach? No, it's not. And like what he said, actually, I was like, oh, that's coaching 101. It's about allowing the person to make their own, to come up with their own conclusions, to come up with their own solutions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it was very interesting to hear that because it is a massive shift for someone like him who is, a psychiatrist, to just think about it in terms of the person has the ability to do this versus my expertise holding space in this,
That
this, in
that
this way,
that
right?
there is the paradigm shift. That's
That
the
there is a
moving
paradigm shift. Yeah.
from an outside in solution
Right.
to an inside out solution.
Inside out
And
solution.
we knew, like, we didn't recognize that the brain, our mind, whatever, is just like any other organ, like our body. It wants to be balanced. And when you look at examples in nature, right? All nature wants to do is balance. And but when we interfere with overthinking, we pull ourselves out of balance.
Right.
And then nature's trying to compensate for this, and then we like, oh, wait a minute, we have to interfere again. So we
Right.
we think another solution in there.
Well, we try to think our way out of stuckness because what happens is we get stuck, right? We
Well,
overthink, overthink, overthink.
and you can see this, like, this is the part I never could quite understand, is like, people can see that in climate change, people can see that in the outside world, right? But no, 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 I'm different, no, no, you are nature, you just don't understand that. And when I love what the psychologist is telling you, is that when you allow yourself to tap into the source of where all healing happens, right? Call it spiritual, call it wherever, whatever you want, right? It's not in the intellectual side, it's in the spiritual side.
It is. It is. I mean,
It happens immediately.
it happens immediately. I mean, that's really where the research actually found that the most profound mark that people were able to point to,
Yeah.
in terms of the psychedelic experience. What was the most significant part of it was, first of all, it was the most significant experience of my life side by side with childbirth, even,
Oh,
right?
really?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's in the research.
yeah.
And it's this sense of oneness in connection to something beyond ourselves and feeling a part of it. That's
Mm,
extremely healing, right?
yeah,
Because it gives you, connects you with a sense of purpose.
yeah.
And
And that's the other
and
thing I thought about yesterday. Sorry for
yeah.
I'm so excited about this, as you could tell.
Me
But it,
too.
I know, like we are on a cutting edge. Like even though
Right.
this has been around for such a long time and I've been playing with it, like 45 years, but it sort of seems like it's all coming together, right? But purpose, where does purpose even come from?
Right.
You don't think about, oh, I got to come up with a purpose. You don't come up with like you get one. You
You
fall
quite naturally
into
connect with it when you
absolutely.
connect with yourself and
Yeah.
you start seeing things about yourself that lead you to what that purpose
You
is.
tap
Like
into that
there
source.
is no wanting to
Yeah.
connect with it. The connection is already there because it's a part of who you are.
Yeah.
And it's quite remarkable that just by taking a psychedelic medicine, you have all these outcomes, from healing to empowerment to reconnection with self and your purpose to a mystical experience or like potentially for some people massive shift in their spiritual beliefs, right? To somatic healing. I mean, it's like the list goes on and on and on and on, right? No more depression, reduce or elimination of PTSD symptoms.
Yeah.
People that go from suicidal to like love for life,
Yeah.
within very short treatments. If we want
Yeah.
to still call them treatments, it feels a little bit weird to me to say treatments because it's really, to me, is more of a sacred process. It really is a reconnection to ourselves rather than a treatment. It's like seeing things, expanding beyond what
Well,
we believe that we are,
it's
right?
getting back into the source, the self,
The source. Yeah.
right? When you start
Yeah.
to realize that, oh, wait a minute, I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my circumstance. I'm not on any of this stuff. Like then you start going into an inside exploration where you go, well, if I'm not all this, what is this?
Right.
And how does this show up and interact with life?
That's a really important point that you're speaking to, because while it is very much a subjective experience that brings you to reconnect with yourself,
Mhm.
this reconnection with yourself immediately facilitates your ability to connect with others from a different perspective. So have more empathy and compassion, really see things from a broader perspective, which is very much NLP, by the way. It gives me chills sometimes how the medicine actually naturally puts you through this process of shifting your perspectives, not just about yourself and the way you see things from the inside out, but also in relation to others and the world
Well,
and the meaning of it all.
it
Yeah.
expands your aperture
It's
to
expansive. It expands who you are, on
possibility. Yeah.
every dimension and every level. It's almost difficult to explain unless you've experienced it, how profound it is. It's a profound experience. And it's a very clear headed experience too, right? Because I
Mhm.
feel like sometimes people try to figure out what it feels like by thinking about maybe cannabis, right? Oh, I smoke weed or I was like stoned or whatever. It's very different than that, like though cannabis does have psychoactive,
Yeah.
like effects as well. It just acts on the brain in a different way. But it's a very clear-headed, the clearest you've ever been in your life, type of experience. Like you see things so clearly. And that is what's so healing about it.
Yeah, and I just want to also just kind of put little bit of a sidebar here is that like we're leaning our conversation a little bit into the psychedelic side of things, but there are disciplines out there that
Right.
supports
Right.
transcendental meditation, Buddhism, there's some religions that tap into this
Breath work, breath
breath work, and the foundation of my coaching is the three principles of understanding. We all point it all points to one thing. It's the death of the ego. It's the pulling away of the separation of that you're intellectual, right? So that you're actually tapping into, so you become more whole. Like we're not saying there's nothing wrong with the intellect, but when you're overbalanced in one side and you feel it, And this is one of my things that I've been really stressing with clients and people I have a chance to talk to, is getting a feel for life, right? So when you tap into that source, you you get an immediate experience. So you have a feeling for that,
Right.
right? So then notice that feeling. When that feeling changes, like the barometer tells us that there's a change in weather, right? That does not mean that there's a change in your circumstances.
Right.
All it means is there's been a shift. You're coming out of balance again, right? And so it's just getting a feeling for it. It's like, oh, I'm thinking too much. Okay, let go of that, right? Because that's where people, what I love about the idea of psychedelics, or that one being one thought away, is that people forgot what it's like to be on that side.
They forgot what it's like to be on that side. They forgot how to connect with themselves, and
Absolutely.
I
They
can't
forgot.
really shut
They
up
were
about
conditioned out of it.
this.
Yeah.
It's that's the piece that heals everything when you
Yeah.
reconnect to yourself, because the way we see the world is the way we see ourselves. And
Absolutely.
that, you know, I experienced that in pretty much every single coaching session I've ever had, right? That the thing that you're pointing to outside of you is present within you. And the
That's
judgment
the
that you
scary
have,
part, though, isn't it? Isn't it?
right.
It's like,
It's not an easy thing to see, but
oh,
guess what? When people take psychedelics, they see it immediately, right? So they also start seeing, so it's not just about reconnection, it's also about recognizing their own strengths and the beauty in themselves, right? Because now we're dropping all the judgment, now we're dropping all of the conditioning, we can see beyond all of that.
and you described to me, like, the word enlightened. It's called
Hmm.
enlightened for a reason, because
Right.
what you're experiencing with people that you're seeing is that there's a lightness in them already. Like, they're starting to see things as humorous.
Right. And you can work with them on things like, well, what are you creating? Right.
Yeah.
Because psychedelics are also, they're not just healing, they're also very creative.
Yeah.
Like they really can shift you into possibilities and what can I create, and believing that you can, right? Because when we don't create something, when we don't pursue something that we say intellectually want to pursue, is because we don't believe that we can, right? But with psychedelics, people immediately shift into that because there has been that reconnection with yourself, that love towards yourself, seeing the beauty in yourself, seeing the things that make you special. And that really is very much where I point people to. What is it? What is your spice? What is it about you that makes you unique? Because that uniqueness that we got so used to judging and hiding and trying to make it uniform with
We'll
everybody
try to
else,
fit in with other
trying
people.
to fit it in,
Oh,
right? Is
yeah.
the very thing that's your superpower. It's the
I
very
know.
thing that you should be allowing to shine,
I know.
right?
We
What
don't.
makes me unique? What do I uniquely bring into the world? It cannot be anything that anybody else is doing, because it's your own fingerprints, it's your own imprint. What is your imprint,
I know.
right? And so many people are not aware of that.
No.
They
No.
don't spend enough time sitting with that. What is it so special about? And that's such a transformative process, because it gets you to think about yourself in a different way, right?
Well, there's a wonderful YouTube video. Unfortunately, he's passed away, but Ken Richardson, Sir Ken Richardson, he talked about the educational system. He had a client come to him about his daughter, and they said he sort of put her in a separate room and said, "Okay, can I talk to you?" kind of a thing. So he went in another room to talk to the parents, and they let the daughter alone. And then they kind of peeked in, and here's this girl kind of dancing, kind of a thing. Well, what was wrong with her? She said, well, she's just not she doesn't sit still. She's not concentrating. She's not all these symptoms that we kind of bundle up into whatever label we want to make it, right? And they thought she was a troubled child.
Mm.
And
Wow.
right. And yeah, and that you've seen that in other people. It's like, oh,
Time and time again. Yeah.
and so he said to her, he says, put her in dance class. Your daughter's a dancer. And she became, if I got the story correctly, if I did, if I don't, I apologize. But she became one of the choreographers for the Phantom of the Opera.
That's
And that,
beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
When you let go of that notion of what is
what's
you
supposed to
know,
be.
what
Yeah,
you're supposed to do, like you're supposed to be on the principal's honor roll. I've been having these conversations with my son, like recently. He got on the principal's honor roll, which I celebrated with him. It really mattered to him. But we had a whole extensive conversation around, let's just talk about this and what it truly means and what you're making it mean about yourself. Because I want you to feel this way about yourself, regardless of being on that list.
yeah,
Because you already are amazing, right? But like what we then kind of write off is anyone who doesn't fit that mold now feels like they don't belong. They feel like something is wrong with them because even the school system, it's a system that just puts everyone in one way of doing things. And that way doesn't necessarily fit everyone. I mean, I could give you an example. My daughter last night, she admitted to me they're having testing. They start really early. Like she's in third grade and she wasn't vocal about it. Finally, last night, she told me she has a lot of anxiety because it's coming up tomorrow. And it's making her very nervous and she's afraid of getting the questions wrong. And then what are my friends going to think about me?
yeah,
Because my friends, even if I just get one number less than them, and we're talking about not like 1 to 10, we're talking about 1 to 100. So she gave me the example. If I got like 93 and they got 94 and they were making fun of me. And it's like, it is absurd,
oh,
right? It is absurd. And it's like, it's ingrained in society because we celebrate those things and we make them really bold and important. And it all for children, it's like, well, they want to feel that. So that's what I need to do. That's what I need to fit into in order to be celebrated and valued, right? And if I don't fit in that, then I gotta hide my anxiety and I gotta hide that I really don't want to do this test because it feels overwhelming. She was like, it's so many pages, mom, and it's not mandatory. So I
oh,
can opt her out of it. And I offered that to her. And she's like, I don't know. And then she went into what I might think my friends are gonna think.
yeah,
So really, even observing my children's experiences and what they share with me, it just reinforces the strong belief that I have that our school system is dated and it doesn't serve us, and it really continues to create populations that are like geared towards doing and work hard and achievement and success in that very restricted way of seeing it.
see, I love that you had that conversation with your son about that. I commend you for that because I don't think, well, we don't do that often enough. Like when your son came up and had this thing about being on the honor roll, right? There's a fundamental difference between being an amazing person and being on the honor roll.
Right.
Not because you're on the honor roll, but because you're an amazing person.
Right. Right.
So, but we've got this all screwed up. We
Right.
figure that because you're on the like to be an amazing person, you have to be on the honor roll.
You have to be on the honor roll. Yeah, I mean, same thing. Actually, going back to that, when we had parent-teacher conferences, and he was eager to know what his teacher said to me, I was like, there was one very common theme between every single one of them, and they really spoke to your character and who you are, and how what a beautiful person you are, and how pleasant it is to have you in their class, and how I was like, I had tears. It was very impressive to hear
Yeah,
that about you, and we hardly got into the academics. I mean, I have the numbers, right?
yeah,
Yeah, we touched upon some places where you can strengthen and maybe like, show up a little differently. We'll talk about that. But what did they say about you? They pointed to what an amazing kid you are, and that you are so compassionate and helpful, and the way you show up is what really stood out to them.
that's
And yes, you have all these A's, but really what they spoke about was the way you as a person show up in this world. And it was a really, really proud moment for me, not because he made it on the principal's honor roll, but because of what was said about him. It was really remarkable. I was very proud, feel
see.
very proud of him.
I'm not saying that, like education's trying to do its best, right?
Right,
Like, but when you get kind of like, I never got report cards like that. Like my
right,
report cards were like, they didn't talk about the character of the individual.
right.
And, but to hear that, and that's the other thing, like I've noticed with my kids as they were growing up and with my grandkids that are going through the school system, their report cards, they are highlighting the character side of things. And that's where I looked at they're getting along with others, they're compassionate with others, they're helping others, They have concern for other people's well-beings and things like that. you know that's character building.
Right.
Whether they got a C or an A is immaterial. It
Right.
really is
Right.
immaterial.
Right.
All those numbers, all those letters tell you is they're good memorizers.
It's a label, right? And you know what? And for all the parents out there that are listening, I want to say something because it I may make it sound really easy in the conversation. Like sometimes you get pushback from your kids, right? Because they are being conditioned into that way of thinking. So it's not, and this wasn't the first time, obviously, I had that conversation with him, but the first time that I had this conversation with him when he expressed to me that he really, really needed to get on the principal's honor. He was on the honor roll, but he wanted to get on the principal's honor roll.
Oh
I
my
got
God.
a lot of pushback from him,
Yeah.
like he wasn't, you're not valuing the fact that I was on the honor roll. Why aren't you celebrating? Like I got pushback. And sometimes it's difficult for parents to just, watch that without wanting to fix it or, making it better for them. But, it got across because I was like, no, it's not about that. I value you beyond that. I am proud of you, even if you weren't on the honor roll, right? Like, and if you want to celebrate this, I'm happy to celebrate this. But this is not what makes me proud of you. It
Mm.
also makes me proud of you.
Oh, you're great. Yeah.
It adds to it, right? If you weren't on it, I wouldn't love you any less. I wouldn't think any less of you. And that's what I want you to really understand,
That's the
right? And
understanding.
it took him a little bit. He went back and sat with it and thought about it. And the second time around, that was a different quarter. He was very, of course he got out where he wanted to get, right? But it was very like he accepted the way I go about it, that I'm not just making a huge deal out of
No.
this,
Well,
making as much of a deal as many other things.
there's a kind of a phrase of doing things in order to,
Right.
right?
Right.
So if you're doing something, if you're trying to achieve getting on the principal's honor roll in order to feel better about yourself or to have some kind of recognition from your mom or whatever, then no, that's not the reason to do
That's
it.
unhealthy.
The reason to do it is you want to be on the
Right.
honor roll. That's
Right.
the only reason
You
to do
enjoy
it.
the things you're learning and you want to do
Absolutely.
well, and that's a
Absolutely. So
result.
we're not saying don't achieve anything,
Right.
but do it for the right reasons because you want to do
Right.
it, because you have a
It's the
desire
place
to
you
do it.
come from. Yeah,
It's
it's the
yeah,
place you come
absolutely.
from. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And reconnecting with your needs in that,
Well,
right?
when you tap to the source,
Right.
right? When you relax in it, because when you get rid of the in order to, then you're in flow state.
Right.
And you will get to the honor roll. Like
Right.
it'll settle where it
You
wants
don't
to.
have to try. It's
You know?
like, I'm like, just do things that you really genuinely enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And if there's something that you don't enjoy doing, we'll talk about it because we can't just ditch all of those either, right?
What do you
We
mean?
can't,
What do you mean? What do you mean? What, I don't have to do dishes? Or
like ditching the reading or the homework. It's like there's some things that, do help you in that process. And some things that unfortunately, because we are in this system, you have to do, right?
here's something I've noticed in my own personal life is that when you're tapping into that, I keep calling it the source, but when you're tapping into that space of well-being,
Right.
the things that you thought were, I don't want to do that, right? Because they're like, I find peace in doing dishes. I find
Doing it.
peace in mowing the lawn. But there are times when I was overthinking in a low state, or sort of like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to, right? But you find that the more you're in that relaxed state, the stuff that you hated before, that hate doesn't exist anymore. You
Right.
just do. And so reading becomes more natural. Studying becomes more
Well,
natural.
when you connect to the reason why you're doing it,
Well, that's part of it.
right? For
Part of it.
you, like this is gonna give me this, and this. Like I'm gonna feel this way if I do this. It's a completely different way of going about it, right?
I know. And it
Um,
seems more natural.
and more natural. I mean, honestly, Rick, I know that we went a really big circle here from psychedelics to mental health to the divine to the school system. But really, to me, it's bringing me back to something that I really realized and really, really connected with more and more recently, which was always within me as a parent. But like now it's so crystal clear. Really, part of my mission is to empower this new generation of change makers.
Mm,
They are the ones that are going to pick up the baton and continue the work. The paradigm shift is inevitable. It's
yeah.
inevitable in the form of AI, in the form of psychedelic research, in the form of school systems being, revamped or rethought, in the form of sometimes wars, right? Things falling apart,
Or
right?
how we look at mental health, period.
How we look at mental health, period. But the most important thing for us as the adults in the room is to really think about this new generation as the ones that hold that power ultimately, right? If we could all go back and like have these conversations with our kids and help them think for themselves, that alone, leave the AI or the psychedelics or mental health alone, like take them all completely out of the picture. That alone can change the world.
Mm,
We help our children think differently,
yeah,
question things, reconnect with themselves,
critical thinking.
be more aware of their likes and dislikes and the parts of themselves that are suffering, express their feelings. We could just put a little coaching program into every school curriculum. That alone has the potential to heal the world,
Yeah,
right? Because if people are brought up healthier, then there is no mental health crisis to respond to, right? There's no fire because
no,
you've done your due diligence. You have rebalanced the system along the way. You have that awareness.
yeah,
You are choosing. You're the creator of your life. You're choosing what you want to create, what you want to get into, who you want to be. I mean, that's at the base of human suffering is that we don't feel like we fit in. We don't feel like we're worthy. We don't feel like we have a choice,
hmm,
right? The victim paradigm that we've been living in for so long. It's really fundamentally a lack of feeling like I don't have a choice.
yeah,
It's happening to me,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
happening to me. So if you can help them think in a more empowered way, I can't even imagine how the world is going to change, right? So really, we're here to put out some fires, right, with mental health and what's going on, and help people heal and help reduce the rates of suicide and everything else that's going on, PTSD, depression. I mean, when I looked at the numbers of how many Americans take SSRIs, now I can't remember. It's a huge number. I
so,
think
yeah,
it's like 6 people out of 10.
I know, I
Let
know.
it sink in. So it's like that's part of the work. Don't make any mistakes. The biggest, most relevant, and most important part of the work is who is being brought up now to be the next generation. We're all going to be out of the picture in a
Yeah,
few years from now, right? We're looking at this from a broader perspective in history, right? So really, I think the other thing psychedelics really helped me do is also like get out of my own way in terms of thinking that I alone can do this,
mm,
right? That is not a process that's a one man's process, one prophet's process, one religion's process, one way of thinking process. It's a collective healing. It's something that we're all creating, and generationally too, right? We're passing it on to the next generation that's coming up.
we have that opportunity to what we do today will determine tomorrow, right?
The next generation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I want to remind people that we are open to any other conversations. If you want to learn more and how we can be of service to you, look at our links. Get in.
Reach out. And then also, I'm going to put it out there. I know we didn't talk about announcing it, but we're putting something together for you guys that you can actually actively participate in, and we'll be announcing it. I'm not sure when, but we're going to be putting it out very soon. So you'll have an opportunity to work with me and Rick and, have a closer interaction with us, which I'm really, really excited about, to
Right.
really get to know more of our audience and interact and really be of service in a more, in a smaller container and like more personal way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Exciting stuff. Exciting stuff. So
yeah,
stay tuned, stay connected. Make sure you
share
like.
the episode, help us amplify our impact,
All
people.
that.
We
Yeah.
love you. Spread the love.
Anyway, so till next week, you be well, my friend.
You too. And until next time, everyone, thank you for tuning in.
Bye now.